Chapter 19 is called The Attainment of Peace. In section 4 goes through the obstacles to peace. So it starts on page 406, the obstacles to peace, and it runs through 424. So it's a very long section. I'm going to briefly just read the obstacles themselves, the headings, and then go into one particular paragraph that can be very helpful in times of trouble. The first obstacle, the desire to get rid of it. What do we want to get rid of? Peace. The second obstacle, the belief the body is valuable for what it offers. And within each of these, there's subsections. But like I said, I'm going to focus on one piece. The third obstacle is the attraction of death. And the fourth obstacle, the fear of God. So under the section of identifying the third obstacle, the attraction of death, it's divided up into basically one subsection, the incorruptible body. But the very last paragraph on page 419, with under the heading, the third obstacle, in paragraph 11, he says, when anything seems to you to be a source of fear, when any situation strikes you with terror and makes your body tremble, and the cold sweat of fear comes over it, remember it is always for one reason. The ego has perceived it as a symbol of fear, a sign of sin and death. Right there, he makes an important distinction between experience and symbols. The only thing we can know for sure is what we ourselves are experiencing. Everything else is indirect evidence that we make decisions about. Everything outside of your direct experience of you is symbolic only. We have to take those symbols and breathe life into them to make them come to life for us. To believe that there's 8 billion people, to believe there's 8 billion egos inside of 8 billion bodies. We have to do that. And when you're asleep and dreaming at night, you do that too. You believe there's people in your dream. You believe that they impact you, that they act upon you, that they can make you sad or they can make you happy. They are responsible for the way you feel. But when you wake up, you don't say, where did all the people go? Because you realize it was a dream with no substance. Illusions have no substance. Hallucinations have no substance. And what he's trying to do is make a distinction for us that we can't make. We can't really understand. Everything outside of my experience is a symbol. That's why he says, remember that neither sign nor symbol should be confused with source, for they must stand for something other than themselves. They have to be given meaning. Symbols don't have independent meaning from what we decide they mean. Their meaning cannot lie in them, but must be sought in what they represent. So that's like saying, if someone hands me a flower, I will believe that represents love, because that's what I've trained myself to believe. And that is a limitation on love. So if somebody gives me a rusty nail, do I not get to feel love anymore? Those kinds of limitations limit our experience of the reflection of heaven and what we really are. So, going on about symbols, they may thus mean everything or nothing according to the truth or falsity of the idea which they reflect. If we decide they reflect the ego thought system, they mean nothing. If we decide that they reflect the truth, in the way we know what we've decided is in our experience. So if I decide something represents the peace of God to me, like my teacher, Ken Wapnick, I will experience that because I've singled out that symbol and decided that it represented the truth. Confronted with such seeming uncertainty of meaning, which is whenever you encounter any symbol in the entire world, and it's all symbols except your experience, judge it not. Confronted with such seeming uncertainty of meaning, judge it not. Remember the holy presence of the one given to you to be the source of judgment. Give it to him to judge for you. It cannot be emphasized enough how important it is to understand you can't look upon the world alone. You can only look upon it with your ego or Jesus or the Holy Spirit. So we take the Holy Spirit's hand or we take Jesus' hand and we look out from their perspective, from something beyond the image that we're looking at, something within us that represents the sleeping part of our mind that is awakening through the Course. And everything has an uncertainty of meaning because we can't know anything here. So we're being asked to not judge anything at all. It's a dream of judgment, so we must judge not and we will awaken. But we can't stop judging. So that contradiction can only be overcome by standing outside of the judgment and looking back upon it and not judging ourselves for judging, for embracing the ego thought system, for being the egos that we are, for everybody else being the egos that they seem to be. So forgiveness overlooks all that because it looks to cause and not effect. And the cause of all of it is a willingness to be separate, a decision to be separate from love, from God, and undoing that willingness is looking at it until we say to ourselves, boy, I'm paying a really heavy cost to be for separation, and I'm not willing to pay that price anymore. When we give it to the Holy Spirit to judge for us, we say, take this from me and look upon it, judging it for me. Let me not see it as a sign of sin and death, nor use it for destruction. Teach me how not to make of it an obstacle to peace, but let you use it for me to facilitate its coming. What a beautiful way of saying there is nothing that the Holy Spirit cannot turn into a blessing and used on our behalf, on behalf of awakening, on behalf of recognizing, realizing the truth. What does he mean when he says, take this from me and look upon it, judging it for me? He literally means every single thing in your world that you believe you perceive through your senses. But as a practical matter, you would take anything that seems to be a source of fear. Whatever you're afraid of, you turn to the Holy Spirit in your mind and say, take this from me and look upon it, judging it for me. We have judged it to be a source of fear. We need the Holy Spirit's perspective to see it from a reference point that is not within the dream. We don't want to see the symbols in our lives as signs of sin and death or use it for destruction to prove death is real. We need to be taught how to make of it, how not to make of it an obstacle to peace, and let the Holy Spirit use it on our behalf to teach us the folly of ever believing there was something outside of us that dictated what we feel, what we believe we are, and what the truth is. So we're trying to unlearn the lies we taught ourselves. We overlearned lies. And now we study the Course to unlearn and learn a new way. And in the end, through what seems to be the infinitesimally small maze that is our lives, in the end, we'll come to a moment where we are still an instant and go home.